the agenda is on the town website, if everybody would like to gain access to that. And the webinar ID is 894-8156-7866. This will be a little different agenda for the Affordable Housing Trust Board. We'll cover that in a few minutes. But we are going to have a meeting again on Thursday at 4:30, and it'll be the typical format meeting that we usually have. And you'll see very soon that we're going to spend the bulk of today's time talking about our 10-year plan that was put together a couple of years ago. And Elizabeth, mostly with all our input, please, is going to give us a good status on where we stand on several of the items. Peggy, do we have any outside speakers?
No hands raised.
Great, thank you. With that being said, before we get going, Elizabeth, I'd like to just say two quick comments. The first one is, we have a lot to cover today. And as you know, we tend to drift off and cover a lot of other different things. So I'm going to apologize in advance if I'm a little bit, I ask everybody to just, if I cut you short, put it bluntly, okay? You guys let me know
Rein us in.
yeah, you let me know last time that I got to stop being Mr. Nice Guy and you know. So we all, you know, it's good. I want everybody's input. You know, we need everybody's input, but we also need to get this 10-year plan put to bed. So please bear with me today if I cut you off short. Okay. The other thing, yay, we finally have a new member on our board, Richard White, who's up here with us. I'm thrilled. Richard's just a great guy. But instead of me sitting up here and bragging about him, Richard, would you just give everybody a little bit of an intro about yourself, please?
Well, thank you. I'd be happy to do so, and I'll keep it under 2 minutes.
Okay. I like you already.
Well, I'm Richard White. My wife and I have had a house in Orleans since 1999. And it was seasonal until about 10 years ago. And we're year-round residents. We live in East Orleans on Mill Pond Road. I had an opportunity on August 5th to meet with the select board, which of course is part of the process. And at that time, I was describing my interest in joining this board based on a committee I serve on, the Human Services Advisory Committee. That has given me a wonderful opportunity to take a deep dive into many of the different needs of our community in Orleans. Housing, food insecurity or food issues, healthcare, and in particular for me, the needs of children. At the center of all this, it seems to me, is housing, and the importance that it has in, well, obviously everybody's life who lives here. I would like to help, and my skills as a board member here, I think, are really primarily in the financial world. I spent 25 years as a commercial banker. I was a mid-sized regional headquartered in Baltimore. It was just under $20 billion when I left, but that was quite a while ago now. So it's now a subsidiary of M&T Bank. I've also been involved with trust banking. A lot of that had to do with asset management. That was at the board level, and I did that for 11 years. So I have this credit-based underwriting background that I hope might be helpful. And when I was at the select board meeting, I also mentioned that I have connections with the faith community. And the Homeless Prevention Council was founded here in 1991 as the Interfaith Council for the Homeless. And Habitat for Humanity, of course, is a mission-based group. So that connection is I'm a ordained Presbyterian minister. So I spent 25 years in commercial banking and then decided that there was something else to do in life, and I went to seminary in my mid-50s. And that seems like a fairly short time ago, but it's just whizzed by. So thank you for welcoming me.
Welcome. Yeah.
Welcome to the team, and Fran, thank you for setting me up with a wonderful breakfast with Richard. I left that meeting saying, we're gonna get this guy, and here you are. So I'm thrilled you're with us, Richard, so.
Well, I'm very pleased that Fran worked on me for about a year.
You're not supposed to tell that part. So, anyways, guys, it's gonna be different today. We're not gonna be reading minutes. We're not gonna be doing a typical thing, because that's coming up on Thursday, okay? So, without any further ado, Elizabeth, are you ready to go? 'Cause we're gonna-
I'm ready to go. And again, I think we can structure this discussion how you want to. But my takeaway from talking to Tom was that we've been through the 10-year plan, or tried to get through the 10-year plan a number of times with this group. But we really want to come out of this meeting today is a set of priorities for the next year or two to focus on at the Affordable Housing Trust. I think, the 10-year plan gives us a series of different approaches to dealing with the issue of housing and affordable housing. We talked a lot at the workshop last time about how, our dollars have been used on various different projects and programs in different ways, and how that can be effective. So I think we think about, again, what are our current resources, which is about $2 million in the bank as it stands today. Again, that this housing is obviously a complex problem. Which facets of that do we want to focus on? And sort of looking in context with I think both the sort of community and the political trend towards focusing not just on traditional capital A affordable housing, which is the charge of this group, to further low and moderate income housing, but also to think about how, as a seasonal community, we think about rebalancing our population and focus not just on housing that is affordable, but housing that is year-round and attainable, because we know that the challenge now is no longer just for those with lower incomes, but it's for those in middle incomes as well, who certainly have both a lack of availability to rent housing, and are certainly priced out of the market for any sort of ownership housing as well. Now that we have this entirely new set of tools available to us through the seasonal communities designation, one of which is a year-round housing trust, and the ability to, again, serve other types of populations. I really think we need to be not just thoughtful about what we can do on our side, but how we're going to approach these new opportunities going forward. So again, I know we've walked through this a couple of times. I tried to streamline this from what was the 10-year plan, from what was presented in that needs assessment. But again, I think also recognizing that we are working in partnership with other policies that are happening right now. Obviously zoning, like when I came in, we made a big push towards zoning, especially around attainable housing. Some of those things might not be, the trust might not be the lead responsible party for those, but we should think about synergies and how to collaborate with other groups on priorities going forward.
Elizabeth, I want to add one comment. Susan and Scott, we had a different committee, right, when a lot of this was put together.
Yeah.
So as I read this again and again for the 17th time, I think now, there's a couple that I just don't feel comfortable that I have enough of knowledge about, because I wasn't on your committee that put that all together. So if you guys feel like
If
maybe,
memory holds, we will.
so if you feel like we're not seeing it what the intent was, or we're not putting enough light on it, please just speak up, and we certainly welcome your guys' feedback, because as you know, it's been quite interesting how we merged two teams into one, and we were told get going, and now we may merge two teams into 1.5. I'm hearing, I don't know, we'll find out, but time will tell. But please, if we're missing something that you think is very important, greatly appreciate your guys' input. So, and again, what Elizabeth said, I asked her, everybody, we can't go in detail on every topic. We just can't. We'll be here till midnight. And we know we have a very important meeting going on after this one. So we're just going to kind of pick things that we think are the critical items, or not critical, or have a lot of substance behind the topic. But if you feel you want to go back and you see something that intrigues you, please feel free to pause us and we can take a quick step back. Also, if you have an interest as we go through some of these items, please just raise your hand and we'll gladly, assign people to the task of taking some partial ownership. Like Mallory, you and Susan, I know I've asked you guys, and next month we're going to have Amanda talk to us about the training and so forth. If you guys want to continue on with some of the great work you guys have done with that, I'd like to get people who have a passion for it and are very talented, and you guys definitely have the background to help us do a much better job with that. It would be appreciated. Okay, Tom, let's cut it short, quick, and let's turn it over back to Elizabeth, and let's get this show on the road. Thank you,
right.
Elizabeth.
So again, however you guys want to walk through this, I think I like to think about this and just generally the work that the trust does in buckets. Like we have sort of our programs bucket, which we run on a regular basis. We have sort of our projects bucket. Those are sort of independent, sort of mostly land-focused projects. And then we have our sort of education and outreach bucket. So at the end, and again, I think I would like to hear from you guys, how would you like to allocate resources and time of the folks in this room between those three buckets, and what goes to maintaining what we have, and what are we trying to add new into the bucket as well. So just walking through this 10-year plan, and I'll try to keep it really brief. I mean, the first sort of, I want to say bucket again, but the first grouping of policies here, the strategy is focusing on planning policy changes to encourage the private sector to develop more housing. And obviously our primary tool for doing that is zoning. We went through a major push in 2025 to pass a by right zoning ordinance to encourage more affordable and attainable housing. I don't want to say we totally checked the box on that, because I think there's, zoning is an evolution and we got to make sure it's working and working for the people here. But we've made great progress on that. The other thing I want to say about zoning is I do think one of the pushes behind encouraging the private sector to do more development on their own was to try to get the town away from projects where we are acquiring property, putting a lot of money into that property, seeking a private developer, and then having that private developer build affordable housing. So essentially sort of controlling the market on these projects like 107, projects like Governor Prince. The message that I heard, at least within town from leadership, was that, instead of sort of trying to control the market and to control the property like we had done at a number of times, and the trust was a leader in that, think about how we can incentivize greater development through zoning. So I don't want to sort of sweep aside those first three, the sort of zoning bucket if you guys want to talk about it, but again, I think it is something we've made great progress on. The other piece of this is in sort of under the second heading is looking at accessory dwelling units. Obviously, since this plan was done, accessory dwelling units have been legalized statewide. Not to say that there's more things we couldn't do to incentivize those under programming, but also I do think we have made substantial progress in terms of allowing that smaller scale infill development around ADUs as well. So that's sort of the first, I guess, 6 line items here. Maybe I'll stop and see if there's more we want to focus on.
You said, opening, that zoning is an evolutionary thing. Based on what steps have been taken and the reaction to it, what is the next step in evolution that needs to happen to really make this a tangible, make tangible progress?
Yeah. I think we need to make sure it works. So the planning board is talking about a number of tweaks, and these are small things that, we wrote a massive ordinance in a short amount of time. Things to just make sure that, that housing is viable to produce under the standards we put in place. And we could talk about that. Planning board's holding a public hearing on that the day after Labor Day on the 8th, among other zoning changes. But we need to keep getting feedback from folks. If we don't see development happening here, or again, what I think we passed a very aggressive bylaw. Maybe we need to go back and make sure that that's viable for the residents of Orleans as well, and just keep doing that continual evaluation. So it's a very concrete, small example. We put a minimum height, first story height for units in the bylaw, and we found out later that you couldn't meet that requirement and build a modular house. So that's just like a very practical example of the types of changes they're making. One is relating to affordable housing. There was a pitch at the planning board that said if a development is doing 100% attainable housing, 200% AMI, that they would not have to include that 10% inclusionary affordable housing in their development. So adjustments like that, whether it be sort of construction-based or financial-based, I do think we have to continue to evaluate that zoning to make sure it's producing the outcomes. And I think we need to up our game on design. Very clear in this town, it's very important that we have high-quality, authentic design, making sure we're updating and adopting design guidelines to go with our housing, super critical as well.
Two follow-up things to that. One is that, do we have feedback from developers about this practical
Yes.
feedback? That this is why I am not responding to your RFPs, or this is what will get me to do that in light of these changes or future changes?
So a lot of this was based on either conversations like that we've had with property owners to say, I don't know if I want to look at this right now, this is becoming a challenge. Or we actually spent a little bit of the grant money that we had left and we put our own hats on as developers and we said, let's try to build under our code and see what works and what doesn't. So a couple of changes there are a result of us trying to apply the code and finding things that maybe didn't work as well as they should have in there.
And the number two, I'll be very quick. Thinking back to the experience with the zoning board with regards to these hearings.
Yeah.
And the feedback from the public, from various people, and just the general interchange of ideas or comments and criticisms. And also, you mentioned this point about, what are we gonna wind up with? What are we gonna create? Does it make sense to think about creating some kind of an advisory board, call it ad hoc or whatever, that includes some of the people, particularly some architects who've thrown in their commentary? They've taken the trouble to go to these meetings and to speak, I think, reasonably constructively, and to help get some feedback from them, some guidance and some help. And maybe they'll learn a little bit about the practicalities of what we're up against. But does that make sense?
Absolutely. So again, I think both focused on design and then focus around overall cohesion. This has been the group that spearheaded this idea of the housing roundtable, community development roundtable. That absolutely needs to start happening so we don't have these sort of gaps in projects that we're seeing at Governor Prince, where, again, the sort of continuity of it becomes lost. Yes, I think that's exactly the process we need to update our design guidelines. It's not to hire another outside firm, but to put together a consortium of folks who know and understand Orleans, who can translate that into something that will be real practical guidance for developers going forward in terms of design. So that's the approach there.
Mary?
I guess I'm hearing a wastewater management advisory committee that's housing advisory committee or something along those lines, simply because as I was looking at you know, who's supposed to be engaged with all of this? I'm just thinking, so how does everybody know that they're actually supposed to be talking to the other person about this, that, or the other thing? Because I'm not sure that's been that clear.
Okay.
You've ended up being the conduit for all of this, which I'm not, which is,
It doesn't work, though.
no, I'm just saying, but, no, I'm saying you've ended
People don't
up.
want to talk to me. I can go and talk to groups, but it
No, but
doesn't
you've been-
feel like meaningful, I think, when folks.
That's
give
what
me
I'm
input.
saying, is that you've ended
Yeah.
up sort of, you know, pollinating.
Yeah.
And the problem is that, you know, because I'm thinking a lot of the stuff which has been the planning board's responsibility, apparently, and I'm thinking, I was on the planning board, I didn't know any of this. I mean, I didn't know that's what I was supposed to be doing specifically because it was part of the housing plan. Do you know what I mean? So I'm seeing that there's a connectivity issue here
No question.
that we really should figure out how to fix.
And that's why we've been talking about, and it's gonna commence in September, right? Are we still on board to?
We are, so I'm asking to get on the next select board meeting, just to make sure we're launching this at the appropriate level, and then we'll put out those invitations.
This is the roundtable.
And-
That was the idea
Correct.
2 years ago, that we would bring this plan to a body like that.
Yeah, because this is too,
It's too big.
it's too out there.
Yeah.
Okay, enough.
All right.
Thank you.
I have one question.
But if there are other ways, if there are other ways to create that connectivity, I'm open and certainly listening, because I
Well,
don't
it's
think
big.
I don't think a quarterly meeting is gonna solve all those problems.
No, I think it gets started that way, but I think we should think truly about what that agenda needs to look like so that the people who are there
Yeah.
hopefully can see that creating something else is going to be actually more valuable and not creating something strictly because we want to create something, but actually with a mission and, you know, goals and timetables and the whole rest of it. So,
And Mary, I know this is like
Yeah.
your second meeting, but of course you're seeing it all now at the select board. But Elizabeth and I have been talking about this for, I don't know how many months, but it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
But this is why I want to make sure we got Kimberly totally on board. We got the select board totally on board, because this won't go anywhere unless everybody buys in and everybody's.
no, no.
Because we really have become, I think, disjointed in a lot of areas.
No.
And I think this getting together is going to really, really go a long ways to bringing us back.
No, and I think also we're going to settle is there an affordable housing trust fund and an affordable housing committee? And we can talk about all, but it's just to have this be in limbo is not helping move us forward at all. And I don't know, I think the arguments can go either way, but it seems to me we're all dealing with the same issue, and I don't really, it seems to make more sense to reduce the number of people who are looking at this or to coordinate it, not expand it again and then make everybody coordinate again. That seems kind of silly to me.
Totally. But it's-
Question.
Yes, Scott, please.
This is 2 years old. It's very thorough at the time.
Yeah.
We knew what we knew at the time that it was developed. But is there a need, I hope not, but is there a need to go back to what our goals are that may have changed since this was put together 2 years ago, and then recalibrate what we're doing now against finessed or refined or any new goals that exist? Or are we pretty much clear that we're looking at essentially the same landscape as we were when we developed?
Yeah, I mean, the strategies are the strategies, right?
Well, strategies and
I've
goals are
done-
different things, though.
This is very true. This is very true. I mean, I do think we're in a different place, right? I mean, we're at 11% on our SHI. We have 62 units coming in at Governor Prince. We have 60 units in at Fair. We have 14 units over at 107 Main Street. I would say the need for 80% AMI, capital A affordable housing, is what we focused on in this room for a very long time. Thinking about other strategies beyond just, again, purchase a property, put out an RFP, have a developer respond to it for an 80% AMI development. Like, we need to think outside that box, definitely. Like, and I don't want to say we've met the need, because there's always more need, but like, your former chair, Matt Cole, was a big fan of talking about like those bands. Like, when you have an 80% AMI, like, it's serving a very small band of people, right? It has to be people who can afford to pay that, but aren't over income. Like, it's a small cross section. So, I mean, it's thinking beyond that, I think, is very, very important. one of the things I really think we should do coming out of hearings like the Governor Prince, coming out, like responding to that question, is looking at some updated, like looking at an updated needs assessment. Like what does our landscape look like? There are only so many data sources you can do this with, but let's make sure we have sort of fresh data, and let's make sure we also have the qualitative data too, like the idea that we are talking to our seniors, we are talking to our young people, so we understand this not just based on census numbers, but understand this based on the needs of people that we're talking to in our community. I think personally, focusing on that effort, again, given this sort of this conversation that we don't need affordable housing. I don't know people in my community who need affordable housing. Like I've heard a lot of that over the past month. You know, putting together a data-based needs assessment to respond to that would be timely, in my opinion.
You know, Scott, I think that's a great point that you brought up. And I'm hoping this group that we're putting together, it's going to lead us hopefully in the right direction. Because I think we've become disjointed again. And I think if you asked all these other committees to talk about the 10-year plan, I can honestly assure you the majority of them, it's past history. They don't even recall what everybody signed off on for us to put that plan together. It's just a short, 3 years ago? I know it started in, 23? But, so it's, you know, it's,
So I guess I would say it's not that these will remain the same, right? No matter what you're trying, I mean, the fact that you have to look at policies, you have to look at the local initiatives and programming, and you have to have capacity coordination and education. Those are the three headings. And I think it's where, because I think right now we have two pieces. One is just to the evaluation part. Are the things that we've done, are they really getting to where we need to go? And do we have the data that says it made a difference to change the zoning this way? And we can see X, Y, Z has happened. That's an integral part of what we have to do. But the next thing is, okay, so those were interesting.
Right.
You know, but we've also said, again, based on the needs assessment, again, it's to say, okay, well, we now have, really we should be focusing on this group of people, but we still have the housing goal. I mean, we haven't, that's still there, right, of how many we're supposed to have over a 10-year period. So it's to tweak that to be sure that we're still gonna meet that. We're gonna arrange the deck chairs maybe, but the need to have additional housing in town is still there. That's the way, at least that's the way I would look at it.
yeah, no, I think that's a good and fair assessment. I think we all have to agree that, I'm talking about other groups, other town members.
Oh, yeah.
All have to be on the same page, and right now, I'm afraid we may not be there, but it's our job to try our best to bring everybody on board,
Yep.
right? So, I mean, 300 new units, I mean, I look at that and I start to, look to see where's the, I'll stop there, but it's time to
No, but
start.
again, let's make sure we're aligned, right? Because I've
Yeah.
been thinking a lot about this idea of capacity. Like, when we adopted that unit, we were all very clear that we had the capacity, both in traffic and wastewater and water and you name it, like all of the different, we did an evaluation of that, and I think we need to bring that back. Because if there are issues, let's identify them and plan for them. And if there aren't issues, let's be confident that we've addressed these appropriately. And so that, I mean, but I do think that's, also very production focused. There are other strategies that I think this group can look at uniquely in terms of supporting individual people or, working on a smaller scale level to deal with some of these issues, and that's sort of covered in the local initiatives and programming bucket too. We don't have to exclusively talk about housing production, and maybe that's the move and the shift that we're seeing here, is it's not so much about, how do we fund new units on the ground, but how do we support people, individual property owners, target those individual properties to focus more on things like affordable home ownership, which we know is a huge issue, because we have made a lot of progress on affordable rental.
Elizabeth, you said you're updating the select board. When is that gonna happen? Do you have a date yet?
I think I missed the next agenda, which is next week, I want to say, but I think I'm on for September 2nd.
September
I want to
2nd?
say is the date, yeah.
Just, going back to the plan,
So?
just ask a question. So, Elizabeth, what I hear you saying is that this first kind of bucket area, you know, speaks to the zoning changes, the amendments that have been made, and the town also sort of reevaluating some of those in light of putting your developer's hat on and, you know, what makes sense, what's a problem. I guess what I'm struggling with a bit is is part of the issue property owners in the village center and thereabouts are not interested in further developing the property to include affordable housing, whether it's on top of an existing shop, or whether it's separate, or just,
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what I'm hearing is not a lot of property available, again, that's on the market or for sale, like a lot of parcels, ones that you would, you know, particularly think about as potential for redevelopment, you know, those that are kind of post-war, haven't been kept up well, maybe don't have, you know, have some vacancies in them. They're just not available, they're not on the market, they're not, there's no interest in selling or turning over those properties. Those that are selling or turning over, the land values are exorbitant. Some of the price tags that I've seen on properties recently are degrees above appraised value. I know the town peaked at a couple of them, and the asking price was so far over what appraised value was. There weren't options if the town wanted to get involved there at all. The closing the gap with property owners, and then again, very very high construction costs right now, right? An unstable market, like a good economy. I'll defer to the financial folks in the room. I think a very strong economy, but an uncertain one. And I think we do still have a long way to go in terms of working on asking for exactly what we want and streamlining permitting through the door. There's still a lot of steps in the process, right? You're going to the zoning board, you're going to the architectural review committee, you're going to Board of Water and Sewer commissioners. Like, our process is still very opaque, I think, to folks. So I think some work to do on that as well.
and the old firehouse in the center of town, what's happened with that?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that.
Can we
as
move
a-
on? Susan, can we table that if you don't
Yeah.
mind, please?
Right. I mean, it's,
We got to get moving here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so I mean, I think that's where we are on zoning. I think we're doing a good job, but we need to continue to tweak. I think at some point we should have a conversation about our inclusionary ordinance. Again, the 1 per 10, every 10 units you produce, 1 should be affordable. Most communities have evolved beyond that. Like, that's a pretty simple approach. Like, they either tier it, so smaller projects have to give less. They provide options, like you could do a fee in lieu, for example. That's a big project, but if that's something we want to take on and prioritize, then I think this group should be an important part of that conversation going forward.
Yeah, and I don't want to mention any names here or locations, but we have people in town trying to do projects that will not, it'll avoid the restrictions or whatever on affordable housing.
Yep.
They're just trying to bring housing to market, which is, I get it, way more profitable for them. But how do we handle that, right? I mean, not, say we, the town. How does the town handle that? It's a big decision.
Yeah. It's a huge policy issue, no doubt. It's a huge policy issue. And again, if it's one that we want to think about and tackle, there are strategies for doing that, but I just sort of highlighted it, and we can put it in the parking lot right now if that's something that we want to come back and have a conversation about. Again, and I think that's balancing where do we want to focus on affordable, attainable year-round? Like, where are we putting our energy into over the next couple of years?
Okay.
And, you know, that is, I will also say, one of the other things that hasn't been working really well. You know, we put a notice of funding availability out about a year ago as a call to private developers and said, hey, if you have a property or if you're working on a project and you want to, if you're willing to deed restrict an affordable housing unit in there, we will contribute to it. We haven't had any responses to that. And I know that everybody that I talk to knows that it's available and it's out there. $100,000 a unit isn't enough to move the needle on a project like that. So, I mean, I think it was I think it's important that we have the opportunity out there, but, you know, I don't see it being, I have no interest, I've got no interest in it being utilized, certainly at that dollar amount, so.
That's a whole separate future topic to discuss, I guess, right? I mean,
And again, I think this conversation is about what topics do we want to discuss? Like, what are we gonna key in on for for the next year to try to do and accomplish?
Well, let's table that one for future discussion.
All right.
I don't, it's not embedded in the 10-year plan, but I think you just brought up a very, very important topic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's consider supporting private development through the LIP program to create additional deed-restricted affordable housing as opportunities arise. And again, there are ways to do that, like we did over at Governor Prince, or there are ways to do that with money, essentially, which is what that NOFA is about. So it's, how do we support others in creating that affordable housing? I mean, the other one that I really wanted to call out here that I think we have talked about as a potential priority here is this idea of acquiring and rehabilitating substandard properties, foreclosed properties, older homes, and looking at how we can create, again, on a smaller scale, ownership housing opportunities on those types of properties. I know we've talked about the program down in Chatham, where they have actually sought and received donations of substandard properties or tax foreclosed properties. And again, we had a case like 22 Old Tote Road where we had a partnership with a local individual who wanted to see a property that was underutilized for housing, bring that back on. Like, are we actively looking for those opportunities? Do we want to develop a program around that? I think would be a possibility and another question in terms of priority.
So the appropriate town areas, do you think they're aware at all that we'd be interested in potentially investing in those opportunities?
No, I don't think. I think we would have to, I mean, so we've done the work, we've checked the legal box, right? But we haven't checked the sort of communications box.
So the low income or the affordable housing program that I was involved with in Newton, that was the nonprofit that went and got that was their job, or that was what we did, was find those units that people wanted to donate.
Yeah.
And then we had a terrific relationship with the local bank, which allowed us to be able to, do the construction, and we had a willing contractor.
Yeah.
But it was years of relationship building, and it was in many cases a tax play for the people who wanted to get rid of their property. So, it's sort of it's following the conservation model in the sense of people are donating their acre of their property because they don't want to pay taxes on it anymore. And they can donate it, and then you end up with all the tax benefits of having done that. So, and that's the only way that, at the time, we as a developer were able to build those units, was because we didn't have to pay for the land. So it is it's a structure that works. And I was also just thinking, this is something where, the Historic Commission is trying to figure out, what do we do with buildings that we recognize have historic value, but people don't want to deal with the fact that it's historic. So is there a way that we could be working with the Historic Commission to say, how do we identify some of those properties? So I think that's another angle.
Sure. Marion, going back to your other point, I did it for years back in Western Mass. I worked with a buddy of mine, and we flipped probably a dozen homes, and the city was getting no tax dollars at all because these homes were sitting dormant.
Right.
They were really an eyesore, right, and causing, issues with rodents and everything else. So the banks or the city sold it to my partner and I at a nominal cost, I mean, like $1. Now, we had to put some serious money in it, and they were, but, and guess what? You got a nice property, and the city's collecting all this tax revenue, which they were nothing. So, but I don't think we have a lot of those here in Orleans, but that's something we should definitely,
I mean, it'd be a great project to explore the cross-section between historic homes, lower value properties, and the potential for affordable housing. That would be a really good exercise.
Fran.
Really
I
smart.
think
idea.
before I did.
You mentioned a program like this in Chatham. Is there any volume? Has it been successful? How's it worked?
Yeah, so the Chatham program is very interesting, and so it started with a donation of 2 properties to their Affordable Housing Trust, and I know their housing authority is involved in it as well. But essentially, they, and so it's got a couple of moving pieces. I think they had a couple of homes where they were in good enough condition where they could rent those homes. So they are renting those homes. It partners with another program in Chatham where you can essentially make a contribution to a down payment and the trust will match that. And then they've had 2 more donations of property where they have acquired a home, rehabbed it, and then held a lottery with the idea that they're hoping that those who participate in the match program will be successful in that lottery. So that's how they're running it, either as a landlord, sort of as a landlord through the housing authority, or sort of flipping and rehabbing it in conjunction with the down payment assistance.
So a lot of one-off type things.
One-off to-
Yeah.
for them.
Okay, thank you.
They have to set up a nonprofit
It's
entity in
run
order
through
to-
I think it's run through the trust and the housing authority, as far as I can tell. There's no separate one. I know their housing coordinator does a lot of, really getting her hands dirty, rehab sort of stuff. I talked to her the other day, and she was, picking out tile or something.
Fran?
I think we've talked a little bit about this in prior meetings.
We have.
About this donating property to the town, and my first inclination was, we're gonna, we're entering a territory that's occupied and controlled by groups like conservation and open space, whose very sincere and fervent objectives are literally to take land off the market. I mean, just speaking objectively, that's really where it goes. And at first blush, you'd say, well, look, there's a property which has a view and in a natural setting that somebody wants to donate to the town and make it a forever place. I'm not sure those are really places that would compete with what our objectives are, because the land values are so extraordinary. But the process of getting in contact or communicating with the town to basically say that we are receptive, if you're receptive, to to some sort of an arrangement whereby your property changes hands into the hands of the town at some point. I just think that's something we need to explore and really get to work on. And I don't know exactly how to do it and what avenue to follow in the town. I think we need to have the blessing of the town that we'd be
Sure.
more aggressively soliciting this sort of thing. And I think we'd have to think real hard about some ways to position these proposals, not simply give us your house. It's something, may have something to do with an income arrangement, so they can live there for a certain period of time, or tax abatement, or something which incentivizes it, and makes it a practical value for them. But I think we need to really try hard on this.
Yeah, and we've talked about this several times, and I couldn't agree more with you. I think there's a huge opportunity here for, especially folks who are financially struggling, that are sitting on a home that's worth $1 million or $2 million, right? If we could somehow get an annuity to them, and then they agree that maybe at the end of the day, they pass it on to the town or something. But I hate to cut this item short, but I'm going to, so we can.
No, but let's talk about this. I mean, because I think this is, like,
This
we've
one-
talked about this a couple of times, and we keep coming back to it.
Yeah.
And like, from my perspective, it's very aligned with the efforts to, like, essentially buy year-round deed restrictions on properties. Like, you guys have different terms for it, like financial terms. But I mean, seems to me like a program that is ripe in the market, perfect, a good match for Orleans.
Absolutely.
And that we could potentially, move on, so.
And do you
I mean,
wanna
I think
grab-
in
you
terms
wanna
of
take this one?
priority.
Richard might want to help you.
We should talk about it.
This one's really, this one's got some meat behind it, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to, okay. But,
Can I just-
future meeting, Susan,
Yeah.
future meeting agenda item, I'd like to make this a separate further discussion. Sorry, Susan, please, go
I
ahead.
just want to share that my husband's been on the Conservation
Commission.
not the commission, the
Trust?
Orleans Conservation Trust,
Right.
for many, many years, and has been involved in seeking out these properties that get donated. And I think it'd be interesting, not necessarily him, but to have someone talk to us, if they would, about the process they use, because it's very active. They look around at, like, oh, that property joins this property that we already own, and I'm gonna call, he would literally call people up and say, can I come meet with you?
Right.
And talk about our efforts, and so maybe we can learn from people who've been doing this for a while, and I know it's a different kind of thing, but in some ways it's not.
Yeah, and I think you guys have to have the conversation in the right way, because
Yeah.
I sometimes hear, well, when you add housing to the conversation, it makes it more complicated. Like, it's an easier conversation if you just focus on the open space.
Yeah.
Would you ask your husband if he'd like to, if he'd be willing to talk to us?
I'm sure he would.
Because, Fran, I think we should definitely do that as part of this whole, I don't know if it's to be in front of the whole group in a meeting. Certainly, it's gonna get there, but I think it'd be great to just a few of us sit down with him and pick his brain. I think that his insights could be really helpful to us, so, if we could, you want to put that on your plate as well, or you want me to put that down here?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Susan, that's a great idea. You're right, because we've talked about that for what, 6 months now at least?
Yeah.
See, when I was just filling in for Alexis in the interim role, we kept bringing this up, so.
That's the point of this meeting, right? Is
Time to grab the bull by the horns.
Move from let's talk about it to let's start to create these
Yeah,
priorities.
agreed.
Do you let me know about some possible dates? And I will talk to him.
Thank you.
Dick and I will get
Okay,
to you.
get to me. Sounds good.
Would you mention it to him
I
that
certainly will.
we'd like to do that, and maybe we could just meet him for coffee or something?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Great.
All right. So I'm gonna skip over a couple of things that I feel like I have a pretty good handle on as staff. Things like monitoring our subsidized housing inventory and working with the Shared Regional Housing Service Office.
Where are you right now on the sheets here?
I'm on the very end of page 1 here. Continue monitoring deed restricted units on the SHI. Like, those I consider part of my ongoing tasks here. And while the trust participates and I think has an active role in it, the day-to-day work of that is more administrative. And, I think rest assured we are making good progress and that you're in good hands on those items. And again, happy to talk about communication or other issues around that going forward. Do you want to move to the second bucket, local initiatives and programming? And I guess at first, I think things that we have done a great job on. I mean, so we passed the affordable housing tax exemption for year-round rentals. That was a huge plus. That's in effect now. So if you're a property owner and you have a unit and you are renting that out to an affordable person on a year-round basis, you get a tax exemption. So I think that's a huge win and something that, again, we can pat ourselves on the back here. But in that, again, sort of incentivize the development and preservation of financially attainable year-round rentals. There are a couple of other things to explore, particularly thinking about how to encourage accessory dwelling units. And again, how do we target potentially with funding commercial property owners to convert existing properties into year-round rental housing or mixed use? Again, I think we are doing that through zoning and permit streamlining. Again, we have that sort of lease to locals program, which is not necessarily connected. It's not funded through this group, but funds the creation of new year-round rental units. It's been really successful. I think we have 9 units created under that program. They're not permanent, but most people we see are continuing year after year. I just will stop if there's other things in this sort of ways we want to incentivize either the creation or preservation of year-round rentals and see if there's anything we want to pull out there.
How many rental units do we have? Do we know?
Total? That's a great question. So on our subsidized housing inventory, we have about 325, but those are again, just those that are deed restricted. And our total, I don't know.
Well, we've added a lot on the last couple of years as well, right? When you look at the old Cape Cod building and
Let's get a better picture of that. I can't get a perfect picture, but we can get a better picture. We have a registration that we're working on as well with it's sort of more focused on short-term rentals because we only have so many resources in terms of registering rentals and inspections, but we do year-round, anybody who is renting property is supposed to register with the town. So we're trying to amplify that as well. So we are trying to get a better handle on rentals that are happening across town in that way too.
And there's get to that old question of, are we asking people to register because we want to penalize them for not having done things correctly? Or are we asking them to register because we want to know, and there's going to be some positive reason for registering? Because people are going to think, well, if I register, then I'm going to get inspected, and then, 17 things are going to happen. So that we've got to figure out how we make it sound like it's a good thing if you register.
so win-win, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be with the tax incentive to register, as long as you're, as long as you're renting to affordable, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Then that's fine. But I think for those who are market rate then it's, why am I doing this?
Right, not everybody is gonna qualify, even if they are renting year-round, if they're winter renting, for example. I'm sure we have a ton of winter rentals, it's like anywhere else on the Cape. But yes, I mean, there are realities. If you are renting, then you should be meeting minimum state housing quality standards, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, there's a balance there, right?
We haven't really talked about this notion of establishing a grant or low-interest loan program, right? I don't know what that would look like, or what your experience with that is, Elizabeth?
Yeah. So again, we have a NOFA out right now that basically says we will grant you $100,000 in exchange for a deed restriction, and not a ton of interest in that. Maybe it's a marketing problem, but I think if we were going to have to talk about lending and preferential lending, then we'd have to talk about much larger amounts, and we'd have to think about, again, maybe partnering. I'm certainly not qualified to underwrite a loan, but maybe working with another bank or an agency that would be willing to do something like that. Again, much like Hetch, they administer our program for the emergency home loan repair program. They underwrite those loans. They take care of that sort of from soup to nuts. So I think there's a couple of challenges there, both in that, we have our budget essentially for how we're going to move forward is about $2 million, and we have to think about capacity and who we might partner with in terms of capacity. But I know you guys have had that conversation a couple of times, and think about how do we influence that lending market in a more preferential way.
I have some thoughts, but I think it's page 3. So, to talk about that.
Other things I think we're doing really well, again, rental assistance program is great, fully subscribed, Housing Assistance Corporation, supporting that program. Again, I think, that's a box we've checked recently, and since I've been here, I think it's a really great program to have and supporting a lot of people. Might want to go back and look at some of those guidelines. Came to my attention, we had sort of a regional roundtable on it. We're certainly at the lower end of the amount of monthly assistance we provide to people. We're providing assistance to some people who are paying, 60% of their income in rent. Is the $350 enough? I know Provincetown pays up to $500 in rental assistance. So maybe just when we get to the point where we hit the sort of 2-year evaluation mark on that program, reevaluating our guidelines to make sure it works well. Same thing with our emergency home loan repair program. That's on the agenda for our next meeting on Thursday to look at that and say, are we sort of funding that to the full extent, and what does our budget look like for that program going forward?
Can you remind us how many households we provide rental assistance to in town? Or what we have the capacity to do?
So we increased that program budget. I think we have 12. It's between 10 and 14.
And are we always sitting at the maximum,
We have gone down and up. We were fully subscribed, and then we had, I think, 2 households that moved out of town. And now I think we are back up to the max, yes.
And do we know, last question, sorry, do we know how much Brewster or Eastham give?
I do. I can't give that to you off the top of my head, but again, CDP did sort of a roundtable so we could all talk to each other, whether it was Homeless Prevention Council or Housing Assistance, so we could look at our numbers across the board. So we have that comparative information when we do choose to update our program. If we do, we should at least look at and evaluate our program guidelines going forward to make sure that we're hitting the mark.
Valerie, would you have any interest in partnering with? Yeah, well,
Amazing. Thank you.
please, that'd be wonderful, thank you.
Just a question. My understanding is that the rental assistance is provided for a period of 3 years, up to 3 years, at which point the family needs to take ownership of the full rent. Have we reached that point with any families at this point?
Nope,
Not yet.
we launched the program in August of last year.
Oh, okay.
So nobody's hit the 3-year mark, but I know there have been communities who have families who have hit that 3-year mark, and they have some guidelines and some conversations around that. Thoughts on programs? I know I highlighted here as something we had talked about before, partner with the Council on Aging and regional housing organizations to conduct targeted outreach to cost-burdened homeowners to understand better housing needs and conditions and how the town can help. That maybe goes less under local initiatives and programs and more under capacity coordination and education. But I do think this goes to the conversation of, we have made some substantial progress in meeting certain needs. Let's make sure that we are continually evaluating the needs of all in our community, especially those like, again, seniors or others who might not be coming to us as often. I know in my chair, I get a lot of calls from seniors who are living in our community, who had a spouse die, who are looking to relocate and stay in Orleans. Like, I get who are looking to come back because they want to be closer to family to take care of them. That's probably the number one call I get. I have that conversation probably once a week. Folks who are, again, who have changing housing needs, but want to stay in our community, that are on a limited fixed income now. So I like the fact that this plan is calling out the Council on Aging. We are a demographically older community. It is our need. So I think pursuing this conversation and pulling that thread going forward is important.
Could this be its own sort of roundtable, say COA, HAC, CDP, HPC, Lower Cape Outreach, us?
Yes.
Can I take the lead on that?
Raising your hand?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
and
am.
I'd help.
I think this is important. It's also twofold since we've still sort of absorbed the housing committee. This is kind of great because it gives us a better idea of what's actually happening on the ground. And it's also helpful so that we're not working in silos and that all of our partners like CDP, who's trying to organize people today for the ZBA hearing, so that they can say like, hey, we may not be able to get actual data on this, but here's our qualitative data. We've had the discussions with these people. We've walked around, we've had discussions, here's the numbers, here's the need.
Without question, Susan, you want to?
Oh, I'd love to work with you on this. I think we had talked at certain
I
points
think we can do
about,
a much better job in this area. didn't
reaching
realize
out.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't realize you're getting that many calls. I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Get them all the time. Yeah. It's really hard.
Sorry, Susan.
And I think that one of the issues is that I'm not a housing navigator. I'm not trained at helping connect people directly to resources. Like, I rely on the staff in Brewster sometimes because they're much better trained. Like, they're more tapped into the sort of social service world than I am. I send people to HBC. I sort of help connect people, but I'm a municipal employee. I'm not a housing navigator. So.
Could maybe the three of you just meet to talk about this? Susan, thank you, Mallory, for volunteering, because Elizabeth, you need some help on this. I mean, this is really, I think this is a good opportunity for us to do some real positive work for the community.
And I think it's a matter of, as you mentioned, Mallory, pulling together some agencies that have contact with, or are seeking to better know what the needs are, but also, focus groups with actual seniors at the senior center or elsewhere, or young families, or, trying to, challenging, but pulling together kind of discussion groups to hear.
And starting with us and those organizations to find out what are the right questions we should be
Yeah.
asking.
I'm hearing two things here.
Okay.
One is part of what's the needs assessment, right? And so there's and that's a broader question, that's a data question as well as the qualitative stuff. But I'm hearing some real opportunity here around senior housing.
Yeah.
In terms of, the programs that have been started in a number of communities where you're helping people renovate their homes so that it can be a group home.
Right, what are
Coming up with the social services that, are going to them. I mean, the programs in Boston where they're taking over entire apartment buildings and creating that kind of system, or in Beacon Hill where they're really creating a social network. So I'm hearing two, one is a very specific program around how do you help people come home and take care of their parents, or how do you have group home living? And the second thing is just that total needs assessment of having those focus groups with seniors and young families or whomever to sort of understand what's going on. So I would,
So needs and solutions.
they're two different conversations here, I think.
But, I mean, this could tie in nicely to the other conversation over here. Like, again, there's people with a ton of equity in their home, but not a lot of income coming in. Are there ways to help sort of, again, bridge that gap? If you're willing to, again, like, if you're willing to sell us a year-round deed restriction, maybe it's gonna reduce the sales price of your home a little bit, but you're gonna be able to stay there, or you're gonna be able to have money in your pocket to be able to, rent for the next 20 years.
It's interconnected, but I think we just have to be sure we're addressing these in specific, we're asking specific questions enough so that we can then pull it together to say, now we've heard, but also here's the program. So I guess there's that distinction between a program which will solve a problem and understanding more about what the problem is.
All right, well, this, right off the bat here with this one's just brought a couple of very important items to light, so thank you for you guys volunteering. Elizabeth, thanks for everything you've done already with this, and we got some work to do here, I think, so appreciate you, all of you.
Great. Anything else we want to pull out on page 2? There are things that the trust is sort of called out here. I think that, this, one of the things that has changed, obviously, is the seasonal communities designation, this idea of the home rule petition for 200% AMI, sort of throws that all out the window. I think at least acknowledging that there are many trusts with down payment assistance programs for first-time homebuyers is important as a tool that trusts can implement. I think there's a huge challenge because there are just so few people who there are so few properties that might be in the range of available to first-time homebuyers. You can't close that gap. It wouldn't be. We would use our $2 million over 3 people if we tried to close that gap between what was affordable versus what was market rate. So I don't want to ignore that problem, and maybe, there are communities that have solutions that are working. And every once in a while, I would say once since I've been here, like, there are other sources for first-time home buyers, and every time every once in a while somebody's looking to fill a little gap. So it's not bad to have a program on the books. Like, again, maybe somebody is getting first-time homebuyer assistance through something else, for example, and then they just need a little bit more, like, for the down payment. So, again, I think something to work on, and if we have capacity, maybe through the Shared Regional Housing Services Office, just to set that up for us, so we do have a program if there is a need out there. I don't think it's a bad thing. But maybe not a top priority. All right, page 3. Are we okay on time? How are we doing?
What time was that next meeting today?
7.
7.
It's at 7. So capacity and coordination and education. Again, so things that we are, I think, doing a really good job on, certainly that middle chunk of things. I'm not officially a housing coordinator, but you have staff support in housing and planning that you brought on a couple of years ago to be able to support the trust professionally. We are finally going to check the box on the housing roundtable here, hopefully next month. And the county came together and has created a Shared Regional Housing Service Office, which for housing coordinators like myself are a godsend. There are 15 of us across the Cape, more or less, and having to know all the ins and outs of LIP regulations and guidelines and SHI, like, it's such bureaucratic, technical knowledge. Having a partner in understanding and implementing that has been incredibly valuable. So just a huge kudos to the county there for standing that up and supporting that. I cannot express like what a tremendous value.
So where do those meetings happen, in Barnstable, or are they via Zoom mostly, or?
So yeah, I call it the Housing Support Group. We meet every other week, actually, every other Tuesday. And we have sort of a municipal housing coordinator meeting where if you have a issue, like for example, 22 Old Tote, they were incredibly helpful in helping me navigate like how to sort of put together all of the deed restrictions and things like that on there. Like I would not have had the capacity to figure that out myself. Something we talked about, so housing coordinators across the region come, they share their projects, I'm having this program, the state didn't approve this here, or like my trust is working on this and I'd like this to comply with this, so that's how that works. And then they have done a couple of trainings. I think they did one that we sent out on inclusionary zoning, the idea that it's not just supposed to be for housing coordinators, but for boards as well. So I know they did 2 trainings in the fall, one on inclusionary and one on something else, I can't recall. So they do that on a periodic basis as well. Plus they help do our monitoring. We contract with them to do our affordable monitoring, our affordable homeownership monitoring. So they are the monitoring agent together with the community partners that make sure that when we do have affordable housing units on the books, that they are actually occupied by qualifying families. So we contract with them to do our monitoring as well, which is huge, because something that I don't either have the knowledge or capacity to do on an annual basis either.
They just charge a fee?
We charge a fee.
Excellent.
We're paying that through our year-round, our sort of housing initiatives money and our regular budget, as opposed to out of the trust fund. So that's not coming out of your bank.
Okay.
So again, I think town has done a great job. Kudos on, again, sort of support, internal support and framework, both on the town level and on the county level for housing. Again, the other thing in here is, we do, I think, need to continue to have the conversation about funding. I think we've seen the conversation with CPC definitely trend towards more open space and recreation projects and away from housing. They have provided about half of the funding going forward. I also haven't seen a general fund article for money to the trust since I've been here either. Those 2 sort of regular funding sources, I have to say Orleans was very unique in that they provided general funds to the Affordable Housing Trust. I think you're probably the only one on the Cape that I know of who had a regular general funding source, but you don't anymore. And so we have a little bit of revenue coming in through the community impact fee. We'll see what that looks like at the end of the summer, but definitely thinking about diversifying revenue opportunities going forward is an important conversation.
Tom? Question?
Please.
Actually, as a comment, I couldn't get my eyes off of that the lead-in line of foster partnerships with local and regional organizations and employers. I simply can't, broken record that I am, I can't get away from thinking that ultimately where we're going with all of this is a more regionalized approach. For example, the idea of low-interest loans. Well, you need to have economies of scale to do that. You need to have a critical mass of capital overseen by people who know what they're doing with a broader market like every town in the Cape. And I think that is something we need to have discussions with our counterparts in other towns and also the major organizations like Cape Cod Commission, HAC, that sort of thing. Employer issues, employers want to hire all types of people, but I know critical needs out here are in the area of, let's say, public safety, police and fire, health related, nurses, doctors, dentists, that sort of thing. Can you hire somebody into a practice? Can you hire somebody into a town fire department if they don't have a place to live? They're gonna come, maybe they're coming from an academy, or maybe they're coming from another town and they'd like to live out here, but it's difficult. Maybe if there was a collective response to that, there might be some way to, one possible way to address this would be to create packages of incentives, low-interest loan combined with a down payment assistance, that sort of thing, for those specific job needs that we need to fill out here in the Cape. And the people in Orleans can enjoy the benefits of success in that area if it happens in Dennis. Or, for example, you live in Sandwich, you work here. Now, you'd probably like a little shorter commute, but at the same time, we may be looking at those sorts of solutions. We have to know what everybody's thinking and what their possibilities are. We went through an exercise, Tom and I and Elizabeth and George, about town-owned land. Now, there was no gems popped out from underneath all the detritus, but there were some possibilities going forward. One thing we want to follow is, for example, the land that's set aside for marshaling equipment and so forth and staging for the sewers.
Right.
Now, they need that for X number of months and maybe years, but at some point, maybe that is an opportunity to have a discussion about a piece of town-owned land. But my bet is that every town on the Cape has these sorts of things, and they may be little secrets, but if we were able to easily cross the boundaries and partner with people on projects, some of these things become more feasible.
And the other thing that's changed there, Fran, is that now, so fair housing used to be a big barrier in doing this, but now you can create, there's a specific call out for a municipal employee preference in lotteries. You can run a lottery with a municipal employee preference. So you could not do that. It was under some of this new legislation.
And so anyway, and also some of the resources we might call upon might be more responsive to a larger initiative.
Yeah.
For example, getting back to the low-interest loans, to build a capital base might mean a variety of banks, other financial institutions that might be ready to contribute cheaper capital to this. And I'll say, partly as an aside, I'm going through the annual report of Housing Assistance Corp. Tom and I are trying to get together with the CEO.
Okay.
Is a real eye-opener in terms of their fundraising.
Yeah.
They are a juggernaut, and they have tapped foundations, corporations, high net worth individuals across the board, and they're loyal. And so they're extracting money from a broad base of givers for what people believe is a socially commendable effort that they pursue. And what we're kind of trying to do the same thing, but we're not even close. And I don't know whether Orleans itself, the Affordable Housing Trust Board, can by itself command the attention or the interest of those types of donors, people who, in terms of looking for solutions, but a broader initiative on the Cape.
Well, and I think this
that's
taps
where we
in,
have to
yeah,
go.
and I think this taps into what some of Mallory is saying, is that you have incredibly capable counterparts in Wellfleet, in Truro, in other places around the Cape who are having the same conversation that we're having right now. Like, how do us 7 people in the room, like, make a difference? You know, I think if there are ways to put some of that energy together to solve bigger problems, you know, I think that could go a very long way. I think CDP does a good job of hosting that sort of quarterly meeting to try to get folks together, but plugging into that effort, I think, is really important. And I know we've talked about having the commission come in. We were going to have them come in August, but August got really busy. But they said they could come in October to catch us up on the regional strategies as well.
Right.
Is that something the Barnstable County Regional Housing Services would ever spearhead? Or is-
Yeah, so sort of 2 different groups on the regional level, right? The county themselves, who they do have a housing person at the county now, which is great, but they are sort of overseeing those specific programs, whereas the commission is more about sort of knitting different policies together on towns across the Cape. So, like, again, I think there's a conversation to be had about creating like a land bank for housing, like you do out in Martha's Vineyard, for example. They have an incredibly successful land bank, a not-for-profit that's working across towns and jurisdictions in Martha's Vineyard. That's something that the commission, as part of their regional housing strategy, was trying to spearhead. I think restarting some of those conversations in light of some of the general concern about affordable housing, and having somebody speak up and do that and play that leadership role could be very effective.
Fran, you all set? Thank you. Let's get moving here. We're almost at 6 o'clock. And we're probably going to have a lot of
Some early.
others coming in, so.
All right. I felt like this was very productive, and I have
Did you go through everything
better
that you wanted to
sense
talk
of-
about here?
Again, I think we can pull out anything else you wanna pull out on here. I mean, we can talk about communication. I think I am trying to get that, that newsletter in a place where we can have a good snapshot of all of these metrics. And I don't have it in front of me today, but a lot of the questions we asked, how many rental units we have, what does our rental assistance program look like? You know, how many short-term rentals do we have? So we have like a monthly snapshot that we can look at all of that. Big shout out to Lynn, who I know always listens in on these meetings. She had some great comments. Just need to take a little time and get that updated and in a place where we can benefit from that from a data perspective. But if there are other sort of communication things that we can do, I think, again, that critically important going forward.
Yeah, because I think the last time we were talking about, you know, how did we get more people involved in the committee itself? And I think it's really as much, how do we continue to demonstrate the need for the committee and for the issues that we're concerned about? Because I think that's what your point was at the very beginning, was as the Governor Penn's conversation has been going on, there's been questioning again, are different levels of housing affordable, housing levels, are they really needed? And so I think there is a need to continue to promote, here are the number of people we're talking about, this is what these numbers really mean, because AMI becomes this thing that people begin to wonder what that is. So I think we have a role of how do we think of what are all those statistics which continue to make our point. And I think that's something that, hopefully once we get built, it's something that will be easier to update because we won't have new information all the time. So that's fine. But at least it would be the snapshot that we'd always be able to say, this is why we are caring about this. And so I guess the other thing is that everything that we do, we should be thinking about, is there data that could be collected because we're working on that particular thing? I think the other piece we really have to be thinking about is, again, what's the snapshot of evaluating all these programs? How do we say, you know, because we've said there are a couple of things here where there's data, we can say we've got 7 people or 25 or whatever it is. We need to have that kind of dashboard, for lack of a better word, which is, here are the programs we're working on, these are the, and we probably have to come up with, here are the programs that we've, quote, done.
Right.
And here it is, and then here are the 5 new ones that we are really focusing on, and where we are, and then how we can, how somebody can help, and here's the data. I mean, that's our dashboard for our effectiveness,
Yep.
and sort of for us to be able to check in each time and go, you know, did we do this? Okay, and again, I'm a great believer in being able to say, no, we didn't do this, but either we had to make a right turn because we realized that wasn't the way to go, or something else happened, or something, which is fine as long as we've learned from that, you know, well, we can't do that, or whatever. So I think it would be great if we could come up with a much shorter dashboard. This is great for us, but a much shorter piece.
Yeah.
I think the other piece that we should be thinking about somewhere in here is, how are we monitoring legislative initiatives? Because I think there is a role for the commission or the board to really be able to say to our legislators, we're in support of this, we see that there needs to be this, because it's always that, there are the short-term programs that we really have, but there are some longer-term issues that we're recognizing are really important, and for that matter, to congratulate, whether it's Senator Warren or, you know, or Representative Hadley, that was great. We're really glad you did that, and we're willing to work with you to give data on Orleans as to what we're really seeing as a success, or what we're really seeing still, we can't meet our goals because there's something you can help us fix. So I think that's a 30,000 foot almost in some cases. But I think that's something that we need to be thinking about, how we're monitoring that, because those things do make a difference.
We need to talk some more about that. I think
Yeah.
that's a great
That's a
point.
fantastic idea, and just to make it a lighter lift, we can, again, working with partner organizations, MACDC does legislative updates, so that falls then to CDP. So we could find a way where we could be getting this information a lot easier, and then even incorporating it into.
I mean, that would be great. I try to look obviously all the time at everything that's happening and checking and reading the reports, but it'd be great. I mean, it would be great to have a partner. And as a staff person, I'm not in a position to play sort of that other advocacy role. So having like sort of a point person on that, to me, I think would be incredible.
Can I add
CDP,
that to my list?
they don't put a legislative update in their newsletter, do they?
I don't know that they do, but I know, because I used to
More
work
like
there,
that.
that I always attended so someone there is watching the MACDC legislative updates.
That would be great. I mean, if you have an interest, I was gonna ask if you had an interest in that.
Yeah, if somehow that could pass.
Because I don't think we almost hear about it after the fact a lot of times.
Right, and yeah, I tend to get information from, not-for-profit groups, but they're not necessarily local, they're not always aligned with us, like, it's not a perfect way, it's not a great communication, it's not a communication tool that I'm able to just pass through, let's say, for example, so.
You know, Mallory,
My boss is also the local representative, so I can.
Love that.
Right.
there's the what's happening in Massachusetts, but there might be housing initiatives that are being kicked around in other state legislatures that are better ideas than anything that's happening here, or certainly would challenge the thinking maybe. And how do we learn about that?
Right, I mean, that's like the Vail and Deed program, for example, is somebody went out there and they found that program out in Vail where they were
Right.
buying year-round deed restrictions.
Right.
Now all of a sudden, everybody out here in the Cape is talking about it. Like, I bet you there are other
Sure.
municipalities and other seasonal communities around this country that are doing innovative things that we could bring home as well. So.
Anybody have any other comments? We have a few items still down here, but I think we covered it somewhat, somehow, some way with these last, anybody have any feedback that they'd like to share? And yeah, go ahead.
One thought, there's evaluate pros and cons of adopting a community impact fee.
Yeah.
short-term rental fee, it's sort of a 3% add-on to the 6%. I know we need revenue, but boy, I don't think that's a real good idea. I don't think that's.
Oh, we did that. That's done. That box is checked, Fran. I mean, so it is just for professionally managed units. And again, TBD on what the revenues are there.
Are
There
they
have
getting any
been-
feedback from landlords and all, or about this?
I think I will have a better, after the summer is over, after this quarter is over, I'll have a much better picture on what that looks like. I think again, the first quarter, we got something like $14. Second quarter, I think it was a little more substantial, and I think we will, again, have a good picture of what property owners are being assessed the fee and what the revenue potential is under that at the end of the next quarter. So I will provide a report back on that.
Susan, I know I cut you short with your question about the new fire station. Are you okay if we move that to Thursday?
Sure.
Could you just put that on the list, and maybe you and Mary, if you, could you just give the group a little bit of an update on where the fire station's at? And if, you know, if you guys don't feel comfortable with that, we can bring in more info. But I don't, Susan, I wanted to make sure I came back to you. You know, we've been moving along at a pretty good pace here. We started off a little slow as usual, but I think we've been moving along at a good pace here. Are you okay if we just talk about that Thursday's
Yes,
meeting?
I might have to amend the agenda. I don't think there's anything that necessarily fits under, but that's not a problem.
Susan?
Yep.
Okay. I know we got a big meeting, and we have folks coming in here to attend shortly, and it's gonna start getting busy. Does anybody, I know we covered a lot. I'm not gonna rehash everything and all the assignments we did today. I should be doing that, but I'm not, because I think maybe Elizabeth, you and I and Fran can have a follow-up discussion. And I don't want to do it for Thursday's meeting, because that, taking up everybody, it's a lot of time to meet today and then turn around and meet less than 48 hours later. So I thank again all of you for making yourself available today and again for Thursday. I don't know what you guys thought, but I got a lot of good vibes out of today's discussion. Elizabeth, you cannot go anywhere for the next like 3 years. That's just, it's you know, it's just, you just can't. So
Well, that goes for you guys as well, too.
you're really doing.
I get paid. Y'all are volunteering, so you have
we
more
gotta-
pressure on you than me.
That's right.
I think.
We're gonna put us,
With me for the next 3 years.
really appreciate you guys. I can't even tell you guys.
This is really good.
This was a pretty good dialogue today, and
Everything made good progress.
yeah, this plan was put together. You know what, Scott, that's a great comment, because I was feeling a little queasy about today about how much have we omitted or missed, and you've been very confident that we've made tremendous progress, Elizabeth, and I gotta give you credit. You're on top of this much better than I am, but I can take that I'm only the new guy in terms of the chair, right? So I got a chance to get up to speed like you. But really, I give you guys credit, because I've been in this committee now 4 years, and we're going much deeper than a lot of the previous other groups. We don't have a lot of active projects going. We got a big one coming, right? Governor Prince, a huge one.
Yeah, but we don't have to do much.
What's that?
I said, yeah, but we don't have to do much.
Be careful what you say, okay? So, but the number of smaller items, like Fran said, we met with Elizabeth, with George, and there's a couple other things going on in town, as people know, that hopefully will come to fruition for us. But we need a lot more activity if we're gonna hit our numbers. Again, we don't have the metrics behind here, but if you read the packet, and I know you gave that out to us a couple of meetings ago, what was put together 3 years ago, I mean, there's some heavy-duty lifting that needs to still get done here. And, we'll do our best, right, to help us get there. With that said, does anybody have any additional comments they'd like to put in where we're at right now?
Move to adjourn.
What's that?
Move to adjourn?
I'll just say one thing. I think so much of it is going to depend upon targeting the audiences that we think need to know, and how do we communicate this? Because there's a lot of these smaller things we've talked about that are, we want to give people an incentive to do this, we want to give people an incentive to do that. And I think we have to just be really clear on who our audience is and have better conversations with those folks, because relying on Elizabeth to be the purveyor of all information is not, this is where I think we have to sort of establish our relationships with who we know in town, or build them, to your point about how does the conservation, how does OCT go about getting, how do they go about getting land? Well, it'd be the same thing for us to say, gee, we need to go talk to ABC Construction because we want to understand, they kind of were looking at this building and then didn't do anything.
Right.
So I think we have to take it upon ourselves to be that missionary around how is it that we get individuals to do things that we think are important. So I would really encourage all of us to be thinking about that, because it's a small town. It's a small town, and so you gotta know who might make that decision. So the next cocktail party, be sure you're talking about the importance of affordable housing, because I think that's where those conversations somehow take place. So I guess I would just say that we have to be sure what our talking points are.
I love that, yeah. Sort of as we do maybe our dashboard, we have that translated into a series of takeaways in terms of where we're
Well,
at.
And awareness is a very big thing, just to add on, Mary, so thanks for, that's a good comment. But, you know, I think this quarterly meeting we're gonna have with all the other parties as well.
Huge.
And quite frankly, Mary, right back to the select board too.
Yeah.
We're gonna need Kim's involvement here. This is, you know, it's gonna take everybody's all-in type of attitude.
Yep.
And we just gotta spread the word of what we're trying to accomplish.
And I think, but I think if we get this going around outreach to both organizations that serve those who have certain needs, as well as direct contact with seniors, young families, et cetera, we'll have a lot of anecdotal data along with straight data
Absolutely.
that I think could be very powerful
Right.
for sharing.
We're gonna talk about outreach fair at the next meeting, and I think a great way to start to launch that. Fun
Valerie.
activity.
I think this was a great meeting. I feel really good, and I kind of realized I've been on the board for almost a year now, and I really think, yeah, it's so helpful, because at first I really wanted to sit back and learn, and now I'm like, okay, what can I do? So having these discussions is fantastic, but having action steps, like to what you were saying, like, if we can leave every meeting where I know, like, I'm doing something and not just thinking about this for the next month. Like, I love that I have action steps now to work with Elizabeth and Susan. Like, I think, like, moving forward, like, those actionable steps, kind of putting that into the discussion every time. Like, okay, that was a great discussion, now what are we gonna do about it?
That's really well said, and I don't want to shortchange Thursday, but I think we need to have some discussions here some more, like put a pending list together or an action list.
Start to circulate.
I like, you kind of, with the finances and stuff that you give us every other month or every month, that helped me tremendously, see how much we've accomplished over the last year. It's really remarkable until you see it all summarized like that. But if we can now put these action plans, and who's accountable on the team, because you're right, we can't just keep looking at Elizabeth, right? All of us have to take ownership of the areas that, maybe that's our strength, Richard, new member just coming on board, he's got a solid financial background, let's find out. You don't get 12-month vacation period here, we gotta get you, coming in head first, so, and we'll do that, and we will do that. And I think someone here will make sure that if I'm not doing a good job putting that down, and this person right here will hold me accountable. But we had, I mentioned once already for a motion to adjourn. Does anybody want to say anything else before we try that?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All right, it is 6:14. This meeting has now been concluded.
All in favor?
Thank-